We are pleased to welcome Dr. Richard Eason for a return visit. He's a graduate of the Naval War College and a former longtime Foreign Service officer who will offer a presentation titled The Curse of Living in a Hydrocarbon
Carbon.
Age. Hydrocarbon. Two words making a
That's it.
compound word. I'm sure he's going to explain both hydro and carbon, but living in a the curse is a curse of living in a hydrocarbon age. Please use the Zoom hand feature found at the reaction button when it's time for a Q&A. Should you have a question or a comment after the presentation, let's mute our mic until it's time to speak. Please know we're recording the presentation for posterity and uploading to our YouTube channel. As a side note, we are open to the public. We don't know what might be said during our discussion. Sometimes we cringe, sometimes we laugh, sometimes we cheer, or sometimes we nod in quiet approval. We always look forward to a robust civil discussion. And now, let's welcome Dr. Richard Eason. Richard, we are all yours.
Okay, I'm just making sure I can. You can see my screen yet? I'm trying to do start the PowerPoint.
Yeah, we see it. Very good.
Okay, excellent. This is actually a course I teach. Just to give you my background, I spent multiple tours overseas working on oil and gas issues. I was the oil and gas reporting officer in Riyadh in the late 90s, but I also was in Abu Dhabi before coming to Jacksonville about 10 years ago. And so I've been looking at this sector for a very long time. And I just wanted to, I'll have to quickly go through a bunch of slides just to show you some points I want to raise, but I want to focus on two things, which I'll get to. But you probably are all already aware of these many disasters that have come out of the hydrocarbon business over the years. Deepwater Horizon, Piper Alpha up in the North Sea, killed 150 people, I think, if I recall correctly. It was just before I arrived in the UK for a tour there. I won't go into detail. You know all those. There are tanker disasters, of course. You know Exxon Valdez, and just the incredible damage that whenever these projects go badly, they go badly in a big way. Extremely expensive. I mean, there's still costs that are coming out of the Deepwater Horizon, for example. And so this happens again and again and again. On the oil sector, refinery explosions in the U.S. Just go through quickly again. Pipeline disasters. We've seen in Canada, I think a small town was blown up because a railroad car carrying crude broke apart and burned the town. There was a disaster in Russia. I mean, these things happen again and again. You probably have never heard of this disaster in 1989, which killed 575 people. These are things that are a routine, unfortunately, a routine part of the oil and gas business around the world. And I'm going to explain why I consider that particularly important, not just for the dead people, but for what it indicates about the industry itself. Natural gas. In Riyadh, we would occasionally have leaks on those fields, and workers would die because they wouldn't even know they were breathing in the stuff because it doesn't have any odor. So they would suffocate before they even knew they were suffocating. LNG tankers, very explosive events. If you could get to one, thank God no terrorists have killed one, but they have blown up in places like China, where this killed 18 people when this tanker blew up. I'm hoping it never happens, but coal, the worst of them all. I mean, of course, we have a current political leader who is pushing this horrific industry. Open pit mining is just terrible. This is beautiful West Virginia, and there are huge hundreds of square miles, but certainly many square miles of West Virginia that look like this, as well as other parts of the country. I mean, is it worth this stuff? Plus, the number of coal miners has gone down from, I think, 650,000 maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, to about 50,000 now, and it continues to drop. It's a horrific business. It's, as I say, as destructive as a nuclear war, and lots of disasters, lots of mine disasters, and worst of all, there was even a ash tip in Wales slid and wiped out half the town. I mean, this stuff everywhere. There are all kinds of means that this this hydrocarbon industry can end up killing innocent civilians by its carelessness. There's the Queen there. Great London Smog of 1952. Again, this is directly a result of the hydrocarbon business. The miners, this is the lungs of the miners. They're still happening now. Anybody going in a mine is going to get these things pretty on a pretty likely basis. It would be hard to go through your entire career and not have some aspects of this. Is this worth it? Worth it? Is it worth sacrificing healthy human beings for this industry? China, of course, is the biggest producer, 45%. Let me keep going. I don't want to go into too much detail. This is all part of a very detailed course that I go into quite a bit of information on. Don't need to go look at that. Sorry. You don't need to talk about the types of coal. Carcinogenic effects, yes, there are plenty of them from all of these products. Oil and gas production. Do you want to live in parts of New Jersey or parts of the Gulf Coast? By the way, speaking of the Gulf Coast, I think it's important that we are talking about perhaps having a war with Venezuela. Well, the refineries on the Gulf Coast are built just to handle the very dirty Venezuelan oil. So if we stop imports from Venezuela, those refineries, 13% of their incoming crude will disappear. So you can imagine that's going to have an effect on prices. I'm not sure our administration is quite aware of that yet. They will be if they went ahead and tried to do it. Let's see here. Sorry, let's go. It's too much. There's a lot of stuff here. I don't want to do too much. But I mean, look, it creates places like this around the world. Nigeria, Russia. I mean, the pollution, the filth, the health effects are just legion. I mean, and millions of people are affected directly by it. Ethanol, that's no magic bullet either. It basically is sucking dry the Oglala aquifer, which is under our wheat fields in the Midwest. So that's not an option either. Let me sorry. See the whole court. This whole course, it leads to corruption. I mean, these are the corruption index, and many of the oil producers are among the most corrupt countries in the world. It's called a resource curse for this reason. It leads to the vast flow of income coming in. Feeds corruption. It's almost like if you're a drug dealing country, or cocaine goes through. It's the same kind of effect. It's a it's here's where the most corrupt countries are, and they are almost all oil producers. South Sudan, Somalia, Syria has some. Obviously, ISIS is keeps trying to grab bits of that, but incredibly wasteful problem, corruption. I don't want to go too much into that. It's pretty obvious. Nigeria, 20 billion lost so far recently in oil revenues in Nigeria, probably ending up in Swiss bank accounts. I don't want to go into how it works per se. Koch brothers, we've all heard about them. What a wonderful business this was for America to set up. This Fred Koch joined with a guy named Winkler in 1927 to develop a better cracking process. This is the way you break down the hydrocarbons in the crude, and you make different products from it. That's what a refinery does. There's something called a hydrocracker, which breaks them even down into more precise, useful products that can go maybe straight into your gas tank. Well, just to show you how Koch's background, first of all, he built a bunch of units in the Soviet Union, built 15 cracking units between 1929 and 1932, and they basically helped to ensure the survival of the Soviet regime. It may have collapsed if they weren't able to get fuel, because you can't build an industrial base without fuel back then, certainly. But then again, he decided he would go and build a huge refinery in Nazi Germany in 1933, the third largest oil refinery in the country. It became one of the major targets for our Allied air forces when World War II broke out. So, I mean, the fact of there seems to be no morality among, at least among the Koch brothers, in terms of building their particular industry. That's a Koch plant. Let's see, corruption again, rent seeking all over the Middle East. You can't open a business anywhere in these oil producing countries unless you get a local agent who automatically gets about 10 to 15% of your income. and it doesn't matter if they do nothing, but you have to just pay that as part of your cost of doing business. It's very common in the Gulf to have these local agents. Autocracy is closely related to oil as well. You can see that it's hard to read this chart, but trust me, that's basically what it says. The higher level oil producers are also the least democratic. Um, yeah, talked about agents. Sorry. North Korean oil transferring. I mean, anytime we try to put sanctions on oil producers, everyone will find ways around it. The Russians are doing exactly that right now, as we have sanctions on them. And there's Mr. Putin himself. There's the dacha he built on the Black Sea. It's pretty nice for a guy who I think makes about $100,000 as his government salary. But that's his dacha, his weekend home to go visit. He's probably the wealthiest man on the planet. Muammar Gaddafi, we all know about what happened to him. His small population country of Libya sat on a sea of oil, and that led to terrorism. I was actually in London when Pan Am 103 fell out of the sky, was blown out of the sky, and had to go up to the crash site the night of the crash, seeing all kinds of things you don't want to see. But that was thanks to Gaddafi and his oil money. If he didn't have the oil, he would not have been able to do that. Shah of Iran, the same thing. Iran, I mean, everywhere you look at Saudi Arabia before the oil, they had these barashti huts, which are just reeds tied together, nothing like they have today. And it's that was their main vehicle of transportation, not the SUVs they all drive today across the desert. And they did have an extractive industry. It was pearls, but now they've gone into much bigger extractive industries, oil and gas. They also had some fossil water underground, which they pumped dry, basically. As you can see from this picture, you see lots of pivot irrigation things that have dried up. So they quickly use almost any resource they have. Clearly, we know about extremism. 15 of the 9/11 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. Two were from the UAE, and the other two, one was Lebanon. I can't remember who the last one was. But that has led, so oil and gas has led directly to extremism, to funding it. Osama bin Laden was given 300 million by his father, and he had made that money by building infrastructure in Saudi Arabia and being paid very nicely for it. So we funded the Taliban, the Al Qaeda, I mean, and continue to do so. A lot of that money, in fact, a lot of these royal families in the Middle East pay protection money to these terrorist organizations, even sometimes when they're attacking their own countries, because they want to protect their own lives and their families. And so they're willing to do protection money. I call, for example, I call Qatar, which has huge amounts of natural gas. I think of it as a Tiffany's in the South Bronx, in that they will pay anyone off to make sure they're protected and no one tries to take them over. Just a second, keep going. See if Saudis spent that much money in Islamabad, but they also send their own Saudi Wahhabi teachers, their imams, over to teach these young students in these madrasas Wahhabi precepts, which are extremely religious. They're anti-Christian, they're anti-Shia as well. So we're also paying for that in spades. They mentioned Pan Am 103. I was there, saw this, and the town was still on fire when I was there. Saudi petrochemical industry, it's huge. It's not just the oil and gas, but they have tried to add more value to the product. I don't want to go into too much detail about what it's like in Saudi Arabia, but it's very anti-West. It's very the education system is extremely conservative and extremist Islamic focused. There was a school caught on fire, a girls' school in the western province near Jeddah, and it was locked so the girls wouldn't be able to get out. And of course, many of them died because they couldn't get out, and no fire department got there in time because, of course, we can't have our women running around like that. Let's see, Mutawayin, the religious police, just horrific. Al Qaeda, got a lot of its money from the oil businesses over there. Just a minute, let me keep going. Torture. I know exactly. I know of court torture cases in the UAE. We of course know what the Saudis did to our Washington Post journalist, a green card holder, cutting him into pieces when he went into the consulate in Istanbul to renew his passport. They've kidnapped princes, and the Jordanians have lost a princess to the Emiratis. I mean, we think these are wonderful people, but and key allies, they are not. They are in this for all kinds of things. When I was in Saudi Arabia, we had many cases in which some American met this nice young Saudi man at college, and he seemed so wealthy and so friendly, and they end up marrying, and then they have a child, and that woman will never see her children again because they can be kept in Saudi Arabia, and there is not a thing that mother can do to recover her child. We have many cases handled by the consular section in Riyadh, and there's nothing they can do. 9/11, all kinds of things were happening. I mean, for somehow lots of Saudis who were in the country were snuck out, even though the airspace was shut down. Gee, this guy on the left has probably had a lot to do with that. That's Prince Bandar, the Saudi ambassador to the United States at the time, who also had a lot to do with that. I'm confident. But let me keep going. That's the previous king. Sorry. Um, those are them sneaking out. The Battle of Khafji, and we spent billions of dollars. We sold billions of dollars worth of military equipment to the Saudis. And we said, okay, so when Saddam came and grabbed Kuwait and he kept pushing further south into Saudi Arabia, we said, okay, we've been training you guys for ages. You've got the best equipment. You take it. You take back your small town of Khafji, and you need to show that you can do it. Well, they couldn't do it. So we had to, of course, send our forces in to kick the Iraqis. About a brigade, I think, it came in, a very small unit in the scheme of things, kick them back into Kuwait, and then, of course, eventually kick them out of Kuwait and the Gulf War. U.S. arms sales, see, that's how much we sell to the Saudis. Boy, that was really useful in the Battle of Khafji. We also train them. Sorry, let me keep going. We were involved in the worst humanitarian crisis in the world pre-Gaza. Now, even it's still bigger than Gaza. In Yemen, we provided bombs to the Saudis and Emiratis to drop on this one of the poorest countries on the planet, and also lead to extensive starvation. But that was our money. It was our bombs that were doing this through the Saudis and the Emiratis, the two high-level oil producers who are our key allies, supposedly. Oil-fused international conflict. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Resource wars. There's petro-aggressions, like Saddam going into Kuwait. Externalities of civil wars. Insurgencies are funded by this. I mean, as I said, ISIS is trying to grab the field in Syria from time and again. There are other kinds of historic grievances. You've got South Sudan. You've got Boko Haram. So many of these organizations are either living off of oil revenues or trying to grab more oil revenues to expand their power. Gulf War, you all remember that very well. Don't want to go into that too much. Let's see. China, it's going to be another big issue. There's significant oil under the South China Sea, which is one of the reasons that China is grabbing so much of it and building islands to maintain control because they want to be able to explore for that oil and gas down the road. They need it desperately. In 2000, they were an oil exporter. That stopped about a year later, and so they have been a major oil importer at this point. Sorry, you are watching Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine, there actually, I think, is still a Russian gas going across Ukraine to Europe because that's where the pipeline goes. And the Soviets the Russians, sorry, could shut that down, but they don't want to because they need the income. Let's see the map. All right, I just want to get to a couple of key points later on. Lots of smuggling, hydrocarbons not used for just transportation, petrochemical industries. SABIC is a massive Saudi Arabian company. Love Canal, of course, is a result of our petrochemical companies at work. You all know that story, I expect. Persistent organic pollutants, POPs, they are toxic chemicals that are adversely affect human health and have actually caused significant damage and will cause significant damage for a very long time. They're also from petrochemicals. We've got, of course, the great garbage gyres in the middle of our oceans, not just the Pacific, but elsewhere. This is what's floating out there in the middle of the ocean. This is because we have such easily available, cheap plastic, and this kills, of course, millions of creatures, sea creatures, every single year, and leaves this horrific looking huge mass that goes on for many, many square miles in the middle of each of our oceans. Microplastics, of course, we're eating and drinking these things. It has passed the blood-brain barrier. So we have microplastics in our brains, and we don't have a clue what that's going to do long term to any of us. And we have no one to blame but ourselves for this hydrocarbon economy and this extensive use of plastics in everything, and not coming up with any real means to recycle the stuff. Just basically having it float into the ocean or go into landfills. Uh, Dutch disease is actually it's not something you pick up in Amsterdam's red light district. It's basically a term they use to describe a distortion that an oil and gas, a country with a major oil and gas industry sucks most of the investment into that particular industry and basically starves the rest of the other productive industries in the country. So it's actually a negative effect overall, even if it may generate significant amounts of income. Okay, let me keep going. Sorry. You know about oil sands? They are horrifically filthy and almost as bad as our coal in West Virginia. Uh, so we also use it to commute, and our commutes keep getting longer and longer. We are driving bigger and bigger cars, and I'm partly to blame for this. I don't drive too much, but because I'm 6'5", I have a Suburban because I really can't fit in a sedan. So I do feel guilty, but I just really can't help it. But I mean, this has affected cities. It's the fact that most of us in 1945 were living in the downtowns of our cities, and now they've emptied out into sort of dead zones in many ways. And so we have to commute farther from our nice homes with our nice gardens, 15, 20 miles outside. And of course, we don't bother building mass transit systems to prevent that from happening. I lived in London and Brussels. I didn't even have a car in London. I didn't really need one. I could get all across anywhere in the United Kingdom by public transportation quite easily. Can't do that here. Concrete itself is actually horrifically polluting and a big part of the hydrocarbon mess. Um, but let me see. Yeah, definition of hell. I mean, would you want to live anywhere near that? I know I would not. Um, Sorry, let me just keep going. Oh, we have to talk about the terrorists. Racism. Whenever we build these highways, we usually send them through poor neighborhoods, and almost inevitably, it would never go through, Ponte Vedra here. It would go through Northeast Jacksonville or someplace like that routinely. So it's also a means of discrimination. So here, we can have a road like that, but this one that collapsed during the Loma Prieta, I think was the name of the earthquake in '89, somewhere back then. This is what replaced it. Is that better? I would say yes. Why didn't we do that in the beginning? Because we don't think about it that way. But now maybe we will. So this basically my whole class and this whole thing talks about externalities. What is an externality? It's an economic term. It's basically saying that when you pay for something, you're not paying for all of the costs involved. You are only paying for the gallon of gas or something. You're not paying for the roads that are being built. You're not paying for the health effects that pollution is causing. You're not paying for the deaths on the highways of 40-something thousand who die every year. Those are all externalities, and those kinds of costs should be factored into these products. They are not. Um, just there was a story in one job I had in the aviation department in the State Department. We were working on getting shorter air routes over the then Soviet Far East. It would cut an hour flying time for airlines going to Tokyo, and that would save them a big chunk of money. Well, at one point, we brought over Russian air traffic controllers to America to have consultations with the FAA. And one of the FAA guys took them into a super giant in Alexandria, I think it was. And they went in there at 9 o'clock at night after the workday, and it was completely empty, but it was like this. And the FAA guy said that some of these Russians were crying when they came from a system in which, when you heard the eggs are in, you had to immediately rush to line up for an hour and a half to get some eggs. And we have these stores with this ridiculous wealth and nobody in it. And so I think if we'd been able to show every Soviet a super giant, that system would have collapsed long ago, long before. Um, okay, sorry, let me keep going. Um, CEO pay is a part of this as well. I mean, CEO pay has increased ridiculously over the last 30 years. 1978, CEO pay has increased to 2023, has increased 1,085%, while average worker pay has increased 24%. The median CEO pay was 16 million, while the median S&P 500 employee earned 81,000. This is all part of the same industrial complex that we're dealing with, but hydrocarbons are a key part of it. We actually subsidize the oil and gas industry to the tune of billions for whatever reason I don't really quite understand, because they often have windfall profits coming in. And so the issue I have with this, I've showed you some of the disasters. You probably know most of the disasters yourself. I don't want to focus on it too much, but this slide is important to me. Hyman Rickover is the founder of the nuclear navy. He was famous for accepting zero defects on the part of his officers and men. It was only men then, on their nuclear powered vessels. It's legendary. To enter the nuclear navy, you had to have an interview with Admiral Rickover himself. There were 25-year, tough Navy captains who would basically, dissolve in tears under this man's questioning. Incredibly difficult interviews. He insisted on this incredible effort, the incredible focus on quality and safety among all his men, and he basically got it. There has yet to be a major disaster from the nuclear navy that we know directly is related to the nuclear power plant. This quote, I believe it is the duty of each of us to act as if the fate of the world depended on him. Admittedly, one man by himself cannot do the job. However, one man can make a difference. We must live for the future of the human race and not for our own comfort or success. Does this apply to any of the people running those hydrocarbon companies? I would say not at all, not in the least. And we need to develop a regulations or whatever restrictions, controls that ensure that the hydrocarbon industry has this kind of standard that Hyman Rickover pushed for in the nuclear navy. As I say, zero defects. But we don't have hardly any of those. We got drunk oil tanker captains. We've got untested critical parts. We got, Deepwater Horizon with technology that is flawed and breaks. And when it breaks in hydrocarbon projects, the destruction is massive, and long, very long lasting. And so that's why you have to have a Rickover to start taking control over this and ensure that these huge disasters just stop happening. And they haven't. And these CEOs and chairmen get off so lightly. It's a pity that each of these CEOs running these big oil companies and gas companies don't have to have an interview with Rickover. He is no longer with us. But that kind of restrictions, that kind of strict inheritance of standards of safety, standards of thought of ensuring that every system works perfectly before it is put in a submarine or at the bottom of the ocean. Accountability. I mean, these corporate leaders, even when they have a huge disaster, I don't think their salaries are affected much at all. This has to stop. It's not just the U.S. According to the International Energy Agency, which is the international organization that deals with these issues globally. Fossil fuel handouts hit a global high of 1 trillion in 2022. The same year, big oil pulled in a record 4 trillion of income. In the U.S., by some estimates, taxpayers pay about $20 billion every year to the fossil fuel industry. Why? Why would we do that? Because they basically bought their political influence. And so they in effect own own politicians and on the Hill. Um, I also, I moved here about 10 years ago, and this is what I call those those horrific big, trucks, pickup trucks that you see around town. Some of them, well above the height of your car, even my car, the Suburban. Why these people have these cars in Jacksonville? They're not out in Wyoming. They're not moving cattle around. They're not, taking big loads of hay to and from their farms because there aren't any. You can tell by the fact that their huge trucks are so incredibly clean that they never have that. They must be compensating for something, is the only thing I can guess. Um, but in Brussels, when I was there, gas cost $8 a gallon. I don't think they'd be having those cars there. But we are allowing this system to happen. We're allowing our society to be so structured in a way that we all live far from downtown. We live far from our jobs, so we have to drive. And we have no public transportation. Certainly in Jacksonville, we have basically zero, except for some buses, to be able to avoid paying those costs and spending that money and time in our vehicles. There's one of the what I call BFTs. Fricking is what the F stands for. Big fricking trucks, or you can take it any other way if you'd like to. But I mean, what is the point of these cars in Jacksonville, Florida? I have no clue. Yeah, I said I do drive a Suburban, but they say I'm 6'5". I've had to drive in the back of Cadillacs with ambassadors on various assignments, and I'm sitting in the back and I can't remotely sit up. As I say, I feel like I'm Daniel Day-Lewis in my left foot. These back of our big Cadillacs are kind of useless in terms of having your passengers back there, and of course, ambassadors always right in the back, and I had to sit with them. And also just the size of these big cars. The fatalities in these cars are much higher as a percentage. These cars are heavy. They stop at a much slower rate. When they hit a car, when they hit a small mid-size or even of an economy, basically those people are dead. The Economist magazine found that for every 10,000 crashes, the heaviest cars killed 37 people in the other car, compared to 5.7 for cars of medium weight and just 2.6 for light vehicles. Do you think those figures would still be the same if gas were $8 a gallon in this country? I would think not. So you could start making cars lighter. You could change the road system. Roundabouts actually would work better. Then they use them all over the UK. They get to be a little scary when you first go into them, but they are a better use of moving people around than what we have. You're not always accelerating into heavy traffic. You're going around a circle, and sometimes there are even lights in that circle to give you more of a break. Let's see. Okay, we can do these things, these wonderful things like road animal crossings. That's another way of losing your life on a car. If you're driving down the highway and a deer happens to be crossing the road in front of you, you probably won't make it. I know that in the Middle East, if you ever hit a camel like that, you were dead. You were basically smashed to something very about a few inches in depth because those animals are huge. And if you're going, 80 miles an hour across the desert, you can forget it. But you need to have these kinds of animal crossings, and they're very expensive to do after the fact. But we don't do enough of them when we're building these highways in the first place. Talking about living in Brussels. They're just everywhere. These vehicles, these EVs, these mass transit systems are just so common everywhere else in the world. I lived in Singapore, it's the exact same thing. I mean, we are horrible at this. Our mass transit system is basically non-existent. Yes, we have a big country, but still, there has to be a better way. Fully electric buses. I could get to Paris and London and Amsterdam in no time and never touch a car when I was living in Brussels. Who benefits from our current system? Well, Russia got 99 billion in oil and gas revenues in 2023. Iran got 40 billion. The UAE got 99 billion. Are these the countries you want to have getting this kind of money? Saudi Arabia got 440 billion. So they can build more of those Wahhabi madrasas in every country in the world, which is what they have done, and further distort the views of Islam by the students that they're teaching. Iraq had 98 billion. I mean, this is where the oil and gas money goes. So when we fill our cars with gas, this is who we're paying. Do we want to be paying these people on a regular basis because we have such big cars and heavy cars and a system that we have to drive 25 miles to get to work every single day? Well, we created the system. We are the ones who are doing this. You know, retiring from a hydrocarbon world, I mean, how many of us want to retire to, say, New Jersey outside of New York? I mean, you couldn't afford it anyway, but I mean, you want to go to a place where nature is more present. Most people do that. They retire to Florida, to a beach. If you're rich, you can do a Greek island. I teach at the Ollie Berkshires program as well. All those people are out of New York or Boston and bought a nice something out in the Berkshire Hills of Massachusetts and have wonderful, quiet, sylvan lives. They don't want to stay in Manhattan, where the traffic and the pollution and all of that. So we don't like the world we've created, where it's not the type of world that humans want to live in. Yet we continue to push for it, and we continue to not have the externalities in these products included and raise the costs substantially so that you would try to use a lot less of this car. You wouldn't live 25 miles from work. You wouldn't buy a big Suburban like I have or a BFT like you see dozens of them on every time you drive around Jacksonville. As I say, I used to work also on terrorist financing abroad and trying to stop it from being shipped to terrorist organizations, to work with the banks to shut down our accounts, assuming the government was willing, and that comes from the money we are using to pay for the gas and oil and gas. That's where the money goes when we're buying it from Iraq, from Iran, from Saudi Arabia, and it's all fungible. I mean, any gas you're buying is basically, in effect, indirectly comes from most of those countries as well. But no matter what Trump is doing with the coal industry, which is ridiculous, he cannot stop what is happening. This year, the world will make 70 billion solar cells. Once they're installed, they are there for decades, making no noise, emitting no fumes, using no resources, costing almost nothing, but generating power and lots of it. Now they generate 6% of the world's electricity and over 1% of the world's primary energy. But unlike fossil fuels, half of the energy generated does not end up as waste heat. That's what happens in your engine. Your engine is not that efficient, and so you generate lots of waste heat that does not do anything productive. Photovoltaic cells don't do any of that. According to the economists, in 2004, it took the world a year to install a gigawatt of solar power. Today, that much is installed in a single day, and the rate of installation continues to grow. Solar power is now on track to generate more electricity than all of the world's nuclear power plants in 2026, all of its wind turbines in 2027, earlier if Trump keeps shutting them down, all of its dams in 2028, all its gas-fired power plants in 2030, and finally all its coal-fired ones by 2032. This is happening no matter what Trump does, no matter what other countries do. It is automatically happening as more of these plants are going up all around the world. Well before mid-century, the IEA predicts humanity's primary source of electricity will be these renewable projects, not hydrocarbons. These energies, these complicated engines that burn fuel, these are very complicated. They're very difficult to make. They're very difficult to maintain and to clean. You're not going to need those much either. Photovoltaics, these solar panels as well. A teacher in South Africa buying a $2 charger for her phone to a company building 10 gigawatt power plants is basically buying the same product. So if you get electricity from a photovoltaic array or from a gas-fired or coal-fired power plant, it's the same product. It's still energy, and this is what they're building in India. This is massive. This is only a portion of this field that they have put up. Many other countries have not. Even Saudi Arabia has these kinds of facilities that go on for hundreds of square miles, in effect. Are hydrocarbons going to compete against this? There's no way. There's no way possible for them to do that. I mean, I had a few years back, I took my parents' ashes out to Hawthorne, Nevada to spread them. It's where they met in 1946 at what was then the largest Navy base in the world because there was an ammo dump. They met, courted, and married there. And so we took their ashes there. But if you drive from Reno to Hawthorne, Nevada, there is nothing out there. You could put hundreds of square miles of this stuff out in Nevada and regenerating power for nothing, for pennies, once you have it up. Um, Here's a bit more. So you also, an issue is obviously battery power, that battery storage. They're actually coming up with photovoltaic cells that can actually generate power at night from moonlight and from the heat radiating from the earth during the day. As the sun goes down, there's a radiation. I've certainly seen that many times in the Middle East. There are other ways of storage. In some countries, they've actually store energy in coal mines by pressurized air in there, or pumping water down to a deep depth or a high hill, and then having it flow down when you need to draw on the power as it goes through turbines. This is where I lived in Muscat in Oman. It was a they did a decent job with their oil and gas, but these Bosch's, these were Dutch Reformed American doctor who went to Oman in the 50s. The only way they could sleep in the summertime was to lie on their roof sleeping, and one parent would pick up and dump the blankets in water about every 2 hours and put them over the kids. They would dry again, but that was the heat that you're dealing with. We're in some parts of this country, we are looking at a heat coming at that level. So we not only do we need a lot more energy, but the AI revolution is also generating all these data centers, huge demand. I mean, I still can't believe Trump is actually, closing down these offshore wind farms and reducing subsidies for solar energy because we need this stuff so badly with the demands we're putting on it. I'm not convinced AI is going to be, is going to change the entire world forever. But I mean, they're going to need the power until we figure out whether they can or not. So let me see. Sorry. Just there's a whole range of technologies about battery storage. Again, there's the pumping it up on a hill during the nighttime when power is lower, and then during the daytime when you need peak demand, you let it go through and run turbines. Compressed air I mentioned. There are all kinds of other systems that are being developed. As I say, liquid air storage using old coal mines. To me, this is one of the most interesting points coming up in a moment. Sorry. Don't want to go into the storage issues too much. But yeah, I sort of propose that in effect, there's going to be a new Moore's law, but in terms of the cost of energy dropping substantially. As I say, I don't expect my children or my grandchildren or even their grandchildren to completely stop using hydrocarbons. We'll still have aviation fuel issues, petrochemicals, but I expect demand to fall substantially. Falling populations in many countries. I teach a course on China, and there's no way China can avoid this. But basically, by the end of this century, their population is going to fall by half. So at 1.4 billion today, they will likely be somewhere around 700 million in the year 2100. That will be an historic change. And there will, of course, that'll be a big challenge for China to deal with because it's going to be a rapidly aging population. But they also will have a much lower demand on products. They're not going to need the same inputs that they need today. Same thing with Korea, Japan, and Italy, all of who are actually leading the way in terms of their populations falling. Italy, a Catholic country, I think it's a 1.5 replacement rate. You need 2.1 to maintain your population levels. But we all know the Industrial Revolution. Charles Dickens started in the British Midlands, filthy factories, spewing smoke from coal power machines, doing textiles and all kinds of things. This was so profound it drove evolution. There used to be a light-colored moth that lived in this region. But then when the coal started covering everything, the coal dust, the coal grime, they became easy targets for predators and sort of almost disappeared. But a few of them by natural selection, had just turned out to be dark colored, and they survived. But all the light ones are gone because they were eaten because they stood out so clearly against the grime. But now this is happening in reverse because Britain has cleaned up. But this is I say the industrial revolution was born in the British Midlands on the backs of coal miners digging that stuff out, that filthy fuel out of the earth, having collapses, dying on a regular basis. Surely it would be impossible for Britain, the mother of the Industrial Revolution, to change, right? Wrong. In the last day of September 2024, Britain ended a century and a half of coal-fired power plants. The last such plant in the country closed permanently and is scheduled for demolition. Never say never. We can change. Countries can change from they've been doing for a century and a half, just by moving towards these alternative power sources. Um, and of course, that technology continues. Who knows where we'll find other sources? I mean, maybe we'll finally develop nuclear fission, or is it? I can't remember which. Fusion. Fusion is the other one that we keep claiming we're getting close to, but haven't gotten there. Maybe they will finally make that move. But tapping the heat of the Earth's mantle. But again, those fields, that field in India where you just see hundreds of square miles of I don't know how many photovoltaic cells, solar panels. The more you have that around the world, the less you're going to need other sources of fuel. Um, I remember greatly reading Future Shock in about 1970. It had a big impact on me. I still remember it. But it was about the rate of change, the accelerated rate of technological and social change being shattering and disorienting. Sure, that's the case now. But let me get to the end. I know I want Q&A. This is what I grew up on. We either had the Flintstones or the Jetsons. I thought I'd have a flying car by this time, but we're not there yet. But we all use different aspects of technology. I actually still have a turntable in my house along with all these other sources, and now with fault streaming. But I mean, technology changes so quickly, and our kids are just seeing that in spades. Remember the 8-track, the cassette. I think I threw my last cassette out about 5 years ago. But by this is the world we all grew up in, this hydrocarbon world. I wouldn't have seen the world if I had to sail around it like Ferdinand Magellan. So obviously, it gave huge advantages. It helped us develop our economies, educate our kids, build medicine systems, build all kinds of things that we rely on. But we need to start moving beyond that. I remember watching computer science people walking across the campus of William and Mary, holding those stacks of cards, and I felt so sorry for them. And I remember hearing one or two stories in which they dropped them and basically ruined their lives in many ways. Um, I just recall, many movies looking at this situation. There was a great Sean Connery movie called Outland, in which it was showing how horrific it could be to work in an industrial mining operation in space, not the clean 2001 or Star Wars worlds you see in the movies. But the challenge is we need to hold this entire industry to much higher standards. Uh, we've got to have Hyman Rickover, looking over us and putting in the systems that ensure we don't keep having Deepwater Horizons, we don't keep having Piper Alpha, we don't keep having Exxon Valdez, all of these horrific hydrocarbon disasters. We must insist on a higher level of safety and security. The Time Machine looked at this. There was a Star Trek episode that looked at this, about how you have this elite society living on the top of the backs of the Eloi, basically the Eloi with living on the backs of the Morlocks in the Time Machine by H.G. Wells. These poor oppressed people working in these mines, or the equivalent in our own society, and we have that now in spades. But this is going to change. And I wanted to end with one of my favorite quotes from the famous Saudi oil minister, Sheikh Yamani. The Stone Age did not end for a lack of stones, and the oil age will end long before the world runs out of oil. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you, Richard. You've offered so many slides.
Yes.
I'm curious. How many slides is the presentation?
I think it's 360 or 380, something like
Oh,
that.
so we almost saw all of them then, and that
It's a six session class, an hour and a half each session. So
right. Well, and you move so quickly, and I appreciate that. And what I've learned so much about what you're talking about is this is all about oil.
yeah, oil and gas, yeah, coal.
Everything you talked about relative to the hydrocarbon stuff, and which, by the way, is organic. It's just
Right.
there. It's something that we have in our planet, but it's all about oil. Do you think, as a foreign service officer, and I'd like to get into that, and I want to open this up for questions, but I want to start off with this question. As a foreign service officer, and maybe you said this, and maybe you didn't. You went very quickly.
Yes, I did.
Our military buildup around Venezuela, isn't that all about oil and
Oh
not
yeah, I
not
mean,
drug interdiction?
definitely. I mean, so was the Gulf War. I mean, so many of our overseas wars and our forever wars had a direct connection to oil and gas, protecting access to it, to making, if someone tried to if Iran tried to close the Strait of Hormuz, we would go to war with Iran in a heartbeat. And if we weren't so reliant on oil and gas, that might not be necessary. I mean, it's also, if all you have to sell is oil and gas, and then you decide to block it off and not sell it to your markets, well, it hurts you just as badly as it hurts them. And especially if we have other sources of energy. And I would argue that we are moving pretty quickly in that direction, no matter what, no matter the fact that this current administration is turning back the clocks a bit on renewables, but it's King Canute trying to hold back the tide. It ain't gonna work.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to vegan Jody. Go vegan. You got a
Yeah, you gotta
comment,
unmute.
question or comment for Richard?
You're muted.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
we
now.
can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation.
You.
My question is, have you guys thought about going vegan? Because the animal agriculture is incredibly energy inefficient industrial system. It heavily consumes fossil fuels. And the massive global production of feed crops for the 90 billion animals that we slaughter yearly uses a ton of hydrocarbons for synthetic fertilizer manufacturing from natural gas, fueling farm machinery, and maintaining the cold chain refrigeration during slaughter and transport. So switching to plant-based economy would therefore lead to an immediate and massive reduction in fossil fuel demands across the food supply chain, but also freeing up land to sequester carbon dioxide, offering a dual climate solution.
No, that's very true. I mean, our meat industry is hugely polluting. I mean, they use huge amounts of the oil and gas, as you say, fertilizer but also transportation. I mean, if we were all to stop eating meat, that would go a huge way to reducing our contribution to our carbon environment. And it would also help our health as well. I agree completely.
Oh, well, that's something that Paul McCartney has talked about for years. We could help the environment if we all just stopped eating meat
Yep.
and ended the meat industry. But that's not easy to do, just like it's not easy to just decide we're not going to use oil any longer. It's impossible. There's so much money involved in both.
Exactly. And we have built an infrastructure in this country that relies on that. I mean, we've got those suburban neighborhoods that are, 15 miles away from the downtown. You really can't get anywhere by trains in many of our cities, including Jacksonville, for example. And so we have built this system since World War II, particularly, that we're stuck with for a time, and it's going to be a long transition, a long and expensive transition. So I mean, I'd agree it's a challenge, but I mean, again, EVs could address some of that issue in terms of the transportation costs. I mean, then I don't want to get into the whole part about the China having controlling the various minerals that we need to build those batteries. But I mean, I think that's a temporary issue down the road. But I'm all in favor of electrical power for vehicles or anything we can do. Not to mention Maybe if we were able to develop self-driving vehicles, and we wouldn't need to have a car sitting in our garage doing absolutely nothing most of the time, overnight certainly, but could be out doing on demand, requested by people. I mean, I would rather not have two cars for my wife and me. If she could, if either one of us could just call for a car and it comes by and takes us to go to wherever we need to go, the doctors or whatever. And then of course, the older we get, the more we might really benefit from having something drive us to the doctors as
Right.
opposed to ourselves.
Yeah. Well, what about bicycles? Do you like them?
In the summer in Jacksonville, it's a bit of a challenge.
Oh, okay. Well,
I,
let's go to Corrine. Hello, Corrine.
Hey Ken, hold on a minute. Uh, oh, it was just so interesting, and I'm so with you on the thing about the transportation. Um, I get so mad sometimes because we just don't have the ability here to do like in Europe. I mean, you can just get on the train in Holland and go to France. That's just so wonderful. And then the other thing about the eating meat, I eat meat. I don't eat meat every day. But many years ago when I lived in California, I actually didn't eat meat for about a year once, until I ended up coming home, which that time was back in Ohio. When I first came home, I recall just being in the house and smelling when my stepmother would cook dinner, and of course there'd always be meat there. I mean, the smell was just so rancid was how it smelled to me. I sometimes would have to go upstairs and hide my head under the pillow. Because but it's so prevalent in everything, and with everybody that I was around, that eventually I got over that pretty quickly. Sometimes now eating meat really bothers me, especially if I start thinking about it. It really, really bothers me. I start thinking meat is murder and all that, but I have to confess I still do eat meat uh every
well,
week.
the thing
Yeah.
is, even the meat industry has externalities that are not included in the cost. Those massive water projects we have out west, the diversion of entire rivers from Northern California to Southern California, all of those huge water projects all across the West, would the cost of that is the federal government. So we taxpayers are paying for ranchers to be sending their animals on national public lands, usually at a very cheap price. They damage the banks of streams and rivers by grazing and drinking there. I mean, we're not charging these ranchers anywhere near the price we should be. We're not charging the farmers in the Great Midwest for their use of Ogallala aquifer waters and the fact that they're dropping regularly. We continue to subsidize, pumping this stuff, building dams to divert water for various projects. So I mean, none of that's included in the cost of food either. And it's the same kind of thing with oil and gas. We don't none of the health issues that oil and gas happen all the time. Not to mention, as I said, the 40,000 who die every year in car accidents, and particularly the heavier vehicles, having that trend upward again. Um, None of that's included in the cost of the a gallon of gas we put in our cars.
Right. So, and then I know, because we have to move on. Um, the last thing I wanted to ask was really the first thing I wanted to ask. Your PowerPoint was so extensive and so interesting, and you had to skip over a lot of those slides
Oh yeah.
simply because it was so extensive. But I guess I'm not sure if this is a question for you or Ken, but will we be able to get a copy of the entire PowerPoint? Because I'd love to be able to just look at the slides on my own and read each one. That was my question.
Yeah, I'm kind of reluctant to do that because it's not just what's on the slide. It's sort of my commentary as well for these things. It's
Right.
less the
And I
actually the
loved I'd like to have all your commentary also, but I would take the slides even without your commentary if I had to in order to get the slides.
I mean, I do teach this course on a regular basis at Ollie. Ollie, the over Ocean Lifelong
Yeah, at
Learning Institute.
UNF.
Yeah, UNF exactly. So I mean, it's been a couple of years, so it's probably time for me to do it again. I teach regularly over there, all kinds of courses.
So is that the only way we're gonna get the recording of this episode of the First Coast Free Thought Society tonight, Ken?
Well, the whole thing is being recorded, so you'll be able to see
Yeah.
as he fast forwarded through all of his slides.
We'll have to get the fast. That's what we'll have to get. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
but-
Darn it. Okay. Well, I did try, and I asked not only on behalf of me, but on behalf of everybody in the group.
It's just, it's kind of like you train your dog and you let it run off by itself. I mean, I like to be there to comment on things and to actually expatiate on what these things mean on these slides, for one thing.
I will look. I get the emails from UNF all the time, so I will look. I will look in the catalog. I think I get one almost every month from Ali.
You could also subscribe, go to one of his classes, maybe enroll.
That's what I mean. I will look. I get the Ali catalog, so I'll look for your name. But
all right. Thank you, Corinne. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it as always.
Do better. Do better. That's
Thank you.
okay. I'm just kidding.
Is it Fika or Fika? I'm not sure how to pronounce the I.
Hi there, it's Fika. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. That was an amazing presentation, and I have a comment, and then I'll go with my question. And I know what I'm going to say would probably sound pretty traumatic, but having been born in Afghanistan, I think I have every right to feel that that trauma and to, as a matter of fact, voice that trauma. Because when I was listening to your presentation, really, what was going through my mind was how it something such as oil, a resource that is supposed to bring us comfort and possibly prosperity in life. Between every word that I was hearing from you, there was a lot of tragedy, there was a lot of blood, there was a lot of suffering. And that's quite painful, really painful, when we think that with every use of many of these natural resources, there goes the blood of millions and millions of people, with human beings always having wars for resources, always having wars for staying on top of the food chain and all that. Many, many questions in my mind always. When are we going to actually value our morality and think to ourselves? One of the quotes that you showed was pretty interesting. And I always think to myself, when are we going as individuals and as collectively as societies, when are we going to actually take our moral dilemma seriously and do something effectively, do something about it, raising our voices and all that? And I know that many, many people around the world do that, but it seems the evil is always bigger. Always, always, the evil is so much bigger than the good. My question is, how do you see the world in the future with the renewable energy and all that? Do you see a world that would be a more peaceful world, possibly with with us having less needs for oils, for example? How do you see the future world in regards to wars? Thank you.
Actually, I'm, as I think, and towards the end of my presentation and my class, I make the point that I'm actually reasonably optimistic down the road, because I think these renewable energy sources are so available, they're so inexpensive. No one, you can't control the sun. So as long as you've got land, you can put up photovoltaic cells, and who knows what kind of technology down the road we'll have. Maybe we'll have something in around orbiting that gathers the sun more directly and beams it down to the. I mean, there's all kinds of technology will continue to advance. I think the hydrocarbon world is doomed in a lot of ways. I mean, yes, as I said, I'm sure my great grandchildren will still be relying on something to do with hydrocarbons, but
Right.
I mean, just again, look at that field of photovoltaic cells in India. That is a massive amount of energy generated with no cost, no maintenance. I mean, you built the things, yes, but you don't have to maintain everything. You don't really need to, clean the engines. I mean, coal is a horribly dirty product. You have to shut down entire plants and regularly clean out the stuff that's in there. And plus, North Carolina a few years back We had some coal dumps, dust dumps that flooded, but broke their dams and basically just killed rivers that they flowed into. It killed all the birds, all the fish, all the life along the rivers for quite a long period of time. That stuff is going to happen again and again with hydrocarbons. It's not going to happen with wind. I mean, yes, the president seems to claim that birds occasionally hit a turbine, and maybe that happens, but it's nothing like what we do to the environment in coal industry and oil and gas. We go to these very difficult places. I've been in the empty quarter. It's 125. You can't touch a valve to turn it. You need to have two very thick gloves just to turn a valve because the metal at 125 is in midday is brutal. Same thing if you're working in Siberia or something. I mean, it's an industry that is just it has so many negatives. But again, as I say, we don't pay for those externalities very much in the price we pay for gas. If we did, we'd be paying $8 to $10 to $12 a gallon, and we'd be using it much more efficiently. We'd be much more like the Europeans, who drive much smaller cars, who have much better mass transit systems, all kinds of approaches. By the way, I also teach a course on American militarism. I include a map which shows the Pashtun ethnic groups, both in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and the huge numbers of them on both sides of the border. I use that to argue that we never would have won that war. The Pakistani intelligence forces were supporting the Taliban, the Pashtun Taliban, on both sides of the border. We couldn't control the border. We didn't have enough troops. It's incredibly rugged terrain. So I mean, those kinds of things. That we are so concerned about controlling these resources that we start these wars knowing nothing about the cultures. I remember hearing an army captain being interviewed that he had 2 weeks training to go to Afghanistan for his first deployment. Within 2 weeks, he was actually negotiating between tribal sheikhs in some dispute. He didn't know Afghanistan had tribes. He knew nothing about Islam. He knew nothing about the history. He knew nothing about the feuds that that ethnic group had with other ethnic groups. He knew nothing about Afghanistan. It's like sending our first year biology student to do brain surgery. And I mean, we continue to do that again and again. We have this hubris that we think we can change any system, we can do anything around the planet, and we can't. But I think you can't. You also, as I mentioned, the King Canute, he was the king that tried to hold back the tides. I think he was making a point. But we can't stop this system. No matter how much money we subsidize the oil and gas sector with, no matter how many projects that Trump stops offshore wind farms, it's not going to stop this.
Thank you very much for that. It's good to hear there's some hope for the future and future of humanity. However, if there was any at any time a talk about Afghanistan war, I would definitely engage in that because again, you mentioned the changing of people and changing of cultures and all those things. I think when it comes to money and when it comes to resources and human greed, so many of those questions really become almost they make no sense anymore because they can be covered up by human greed and the evil that is really beyond comprehension. But I would definitely engage in that conversation if there was ever.
And please do.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for your comments and your questions. Fred, you have a comment or a question?
Just kind of a comment and follow up on what he is saying about what, those people that put in charge of stuff they had no qualifications for. And that seems to happen quite a bit under certain administrations where there's more political loyalty and how much you kowtow to a particular ideology.
Right.
Actual ability to do the job that happens over and over again, including, back in 2001 to 2008 and 2009 and under our current administration.
Arguments here.
And it seems like, I don't know, if we're barreling towards disaster. Do we have to go through another economic catastrophe before enough people get like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have been doing that. Maybe we shouldn't be voting for these particular type of people. I don't know. It is depressing to think about where the way things are heading. And I mean, there are possibilities for improvement, but certain politicians keep scuttling it as much as possible, as with the billions in petrodollars, just fueling our collapse of our democracy. That's what frightens me.
Yeah, very true. But just one, as I mentioned, the demographics I think are hugely important. Basically, China is going to fall by half by the end of the century. Italy, Japan, Korea are already dropping substantially every year. The human population is going to peak. Actually, it's going to continue to go up in Africa for quite a while, but India itself is going to continue to grow for about 30 more years, but then it's going to drop. India is already the most populous country in the world now. It passed China several years ago. China is losing several million a year, and their population is rapidly aging at the same time. So, I mean, eventually there's going to be less demand on oil and resources around the world. But it's not going to be necessarily benefiting much of us in our lifetimes. It's going to be the next generations that will see that happening.
If Richard, if I can, philosophical questions. You quoted over as saying something, or at least in part, live for the future of the human race.
Right.
And there's a large, I mean, there's probably millions, if not billions, of people that will ask, why? What's the point? Why do we have to live for the future of the human race? I'm only going to be alive for 80 years if I am successful at living, and maybe those 80 years won't be healthy. So why do I have to live for the future of the human race? That's my first philosophical question to a foreign service officer offering us. But it's sort of serious because because I can draw this to the Trump and the GOP and all of that. They don't seem to care about the future. They only seem to care about what's happening to them at this moment. So if you can draw some analogy there, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an excessive narcissist, like we have too many, they don't care about anybody else but themselves. But I, for one, care about my children. I care about my grandchildren. I care about my friends and their children. I mean, if you are, I think most people fall into that category. Most people are not super narcissists that just care about themselves and don't care about anything happening in the world as they leave it. I guess maybe I'm an optimist, or I don't know, maybe I'm too much of an idealist. But I think most people are that way. What's the point of living if you can't leave some legacy? Usually meaning children or grandchildren or something, friends. I mean, something you've established, something you've left. I mean, like people didn't like Andrew Carnegie. But I love the fact that he built libraries all across this country, most of them lasting into the second century after he built them. I mean, these kinds of legacies are important, but on a personal level, those things are important to me. I hope my grandkids flourish. I hope my great grandkids flourish. I hope there's a good environment, a place where they can have successful, productive lives, and for generations. I mean, if you don't care about that, I don't know how to change your mind.
Fair. That's fair. Can we ask Don? He has got a comment or a question. You're muted, Don. So if you'd like to speak, thank you, Don. Go ahead. Hello, Don. We're listening, but we don't hear you. At least I don't.
I don't either. It's very quiet. You can only barely hear you. You closer to the mic, maybe, or not really.
You're breaking up, Don. So it's difficult to. We can't at least I can't understand you.
How about now?
Yes, good.
That's good.
Better. Okay. Yeah, I had my my speaker on, and I guess it was interfering. Anyway, I didn't hear anything about green hydrogen in your talk. I was just
You're right.
curious what your feelings are on that.
I mean, I couldn't make any. Don't have an opinion on it because I don't know enough about it. I haven't looked at that. I mean, when I was developing this class some years back, it wasn't an issue that I stumbled across. I mean, I am I'm a liberal arts guy. I majored in archaeology, and I had a career in the Foreign Service dealing with these kinds of issues. But I really don't. I can't really talk about green hydrogen very much. I think hydrogen has some very great potential. I mean, I think what like fuel cell cars, the only output is water from what I understand, when they use
Right.
hydrogen as a fuel. So that sounds like very, very great potential to me, but it's not a sector I worked in. I mean, I wasn't dealing with this as a diplomat overseas around the world, so I wouldn't feel like I had any right to talk about it much.
Okay. And I just want to repeat what you said about the possibility of maybe someday we'll have autonomous vehicles, like where Ubers will be running EVs, and you won't really need a car. You don't, at least don't need a second car.
Yep,
And that's my real hope for the future. Thank you.
definitely, me too. I mean, you live in New York City, you don't need a car either. You just get a cab. You can't do that really easily. And of course, we got the Uber, which is a step in that direction. But I mean, it does seem I have a niece who worked for Google, and was involved in the Waymo program, which seems to be doing well in 3 cities, I think, across the country. These self-driving vehicles that you can order. And I mean, I would feel uncomfortable around them probably for a time, as would almost anybody. But I think it's inevitable that the technology will improve. It's also inevitable there'll be occasional deaths or accidents caused by them. But I mean, that's the way with any technology, unfortunately.
Uh, Richard, you're a retired or former
Right.
foreign service officer, and my understanding is, you fall under the United States State Department as such, and my
Yes.
understanding is also there are a couple of different types of foreign service officers. We got the generalists and we got the specialists, and
Right.
so if you could just spend, we only have a few more minutes, but I'm interested in if you could spend just a little bit of time of explaining which type of foreign service officer you were and where you had the most enjoyment serving in terms of geographics.
Sure. I was what we call a generalist. I came in actually as a consular officer, so I started out doing passports and visas, but I later switched to the economic cone. And then towards the end of my career, I was doing everything across the board. I was acting number two in the embassy on multiple occasions for a year and a half in Brussels. Occasionally, I was actually the acting ambassador in Brussels. So I mean, you sort of move up the hierarchy. But I was definitely a generalist, and I served in 9 different countries, Brussels and London, 5 Middle Eastern countries, Tunisia, Oman, UAE, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, Singapore, where I was seconded to the APEC Secretariat, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum. I was the only American there representing my country with 20 other countries that surround the entire Pacific Basin. There was Russians, there were Chinese and Taiwanese in the same organization at the time. That was the only organization with both of those. But we all work towards opening up markets, building economic cooperation and coordination across that country. And also, I served, my first tour was in Uruguay in South America.
Okay. So of all of those places that you've lived, you settled in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yes. Well, partly that was because I'd been overseas so long, I had no home in the United States, and I needed to buy a house. And so I'd gone to the Naval War College. I wanted to do something to use the military policy, national security policy I had been trained in. And so it came down to my last 2 choices to come back to America. I was in Abu Dhabi at the time, were the Navy SEAL School in San Diego and Fourth Fleet here in Jacksonville. And I needed to buy a house. What could I buy in San Diego? I'd be about an hour and a half into the deep desert, uh, having a horrible to commute to get to Coronado. So that's why I'm in Jacksonville. I actually, it was kind of cool because my first tour was tiny Uruguay, this country of 3 million people. And my last official function as a State Department officer for Fourth Fleet was attending a defense conference in Montevideo, Uruguay. So my entire 32-year career was bookended by this lovely little country, Uruguay, 3 million people, and I couldn't have had it turn out to be a better way. But I mean, I've loved the variety. I loved working at the APEC Secretariat, where I was dealing with 20 other countries. My boss during the China year, they host the big leaders meeting. Every time you see a president wearing some kind of silly jacket, it's usually that they're attending the leaders meeting and they're provided with these things. And so when China took over, it was the year they joined the WTO, and we had a big meeting to welcome them to the WTO, which I think was a mistake looking back. But it was also the year of the spy plane incident, in which this Chinese fighter tried to harass one of our spy planes over the South China Sea. He ended up dying, crashing into the South China Sea and dying. But we had to fly our plane into Hainan Island in China, where it was, of course, stripped completely empty. Luckily, they dumped a lot of the stuff in the ocean, but it was kind of tense my first few weeks there with my Chinese ambassador boss. While we were having this, we had American, in a sense, hostages for a while until we could negotiate their freedom. And we, as I say, we got a stripped back plane after an even much longer time. But I mean, it's fascinating. I worked closely with Russians. I worked closely with Vietnamese. I went to Hanoi, found out that the Vietnamese love us. And at the time, most of the Vietnamese couldn't even remember the war because it's a very young population. And now they are looking towards us to help defend them against China as well. I mean, it's a very interesting world, having grown up during the Vietnam War, to see this whole strategic change. And of course, the strategic changes are happening left and right. I teach a course on the Middle East. I teach a course on the rise of China on the world stage. All of these I do at Ali from time to time, as well as other fun stuff like the Northern Renaissance and art, which has nothing to do with this conversation.
Right. Well, okay, that's fine. But the title of your conversation with us tonight is "The Curse of Living in a Hydrocarbon Age." But are there blessings?
Well, as I said, we've been able to develop rapidly, economically. Now, Britain, kicked off the Industrial Revolution to the cost of horrible pollution. I mean, I'm sure, many people died many years younger by breathing in that coal dust for generations. That was not counted in the cost of that kind of industrial power. And the same thing is happening to us now. We're not. We finally moved away from leaded gas, but that's been relatively recent as well. We don't understand all the things these technologies do to us. Solar doesn't do any of that. Wind doesn't do any of that. But hydrocarbons have done all of those things that I blew through very quickly in my presentation, because, as I say, it's like 380 slides.
Well, I very much appreciate you, Richard, for spending your evening with us tonight, and we're wrapping it up right now. But before I go, I want to ask everybody one question. What did the hydrogen atom say to the carbon atom? Anyone? Well, obviously the answer is let's bond. Okay, all right. So we can all grow collectively. Thank you very much.
Ken, I can't raise my hand. I apologize. Can I just make one quick comment? I just want to thank Richard. He did a presentation for us yesterday morning.
Yes.
At our Playing with Ideas group. What I wanted to say was, what's very interesting to me is the 3 states that are gaining the biggest utilization from green energy are solid red states. Kansas, 52% of their energy is wind. So I just thought you'd find that interesting.
Well, thank you, Jeanette. Lance, you got your hand up. You got something to wrap us up with?
Richard was saying all the things that have happened because of hydrocarbons that are not counted. I watched a documentary the other day about serial killers. The 1960s and 70s, America has had all kinds of serial killers, right? And one of the arguments was leaded gasoline, that that children have grown up with in neighborhoods with so much lead that that it's a contributor to the to this phenomena that America kind of led the world. You know, you watch any movie, the serial killers are always Americans, right? And
Yes.
and they went from one to the other, where these guys grew up and the amount of lead in the air, especially in California. You can see that serial killers stopped when unleaded gas was introduced, and it's very. I thought it was very interesting.
Well, thanks. I'll look into that and maybe add a couple of slides if I can find some data on it to
It
include.
was really interesting. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Lance. Thank you, everybody, for your comments and your questions, and especially thank you, Richard, for your expertise, your wisdom, your insights, your knowledge, and your time with us this evening. I very much appreciate everybody who has been with us tonight, and I want everybody to get home safely if you're not already there. I appreciate you all. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you,
Care.
sir.
Right.
Cheers.
Thank you.